Exercise 3. In this exercise, we're going to calculate the total number of bookings for each room type and the total room nights for each room type based on the data here on this spreadsheet called Ex2 Hotel Data. So let's start with total bookings for standard twin room. Now let's make a note of where the room types are. So the room types for all of our reservations can be found on C5, starting from C5 all the way down to C95. C5 to C95 contains all the room types. So let's type the equal sign here. So the total number of bookings for standard twin rooms, we're going to use a function called COUNTIF because we simply want to count how many bookings have standard twin room here in column C. So for example, booking ID 1001 and 1003. Okay, for 1001 it is standard twin room, but for 1003 it's not. So this counts as 1. This counts as 1. So we just want to count how many times standard twin room appears in C5 to C95, because those are the starting and ending cells of this range. So I go back here. Whoops. Okay, so equal. I'm going to use a function called COUNTIF, which means count the cell only if it satisfies the condition. So you can see COUNTIF takes two arguments. The first is the range. So we already know that the range is C5 to C95, but we can't enter that here because we also need to add the sheet reference because it's on another sheet. So I can type the sheet reference or I can just use the mouse. So right now I'm going to use the mouse. Okay, so I click on the name of the sheet that has the range. So I click here, EX2 Hotel Data. And as I click the sheet, you'll see that I move to that sheet. But up here, you can see the formula and it already filled in the sheet reference for me. And now I'm just going to use the mouse to click C5. And as I click, you'll see that the formula is also being written. So I drag it all the way down to C95. Okay, so it's up here. So this is our range, comma. And the criteria, okay, the criteria is we want to count how many times standard twin room appears in this range. Now, if you remember, we just switched to this worksheet. Now we gotta go back to exercise 3 because that's where we came from. Okay, so our second argument is going to be A5. So basically what this is saying is count how many times the value that is in cell A5 of this worksheet. Okay, so we don't need this sheet reference. I'm going to remove that. So count how many times the value in A5, which is standard twin room, appears in this range C5 to C95 on this worksheet, EX2 Hotel Data. Now when I press enter, you'll see that there are 24 bookings which have standard twin room in column C. So now I can copy this formula after I change this into an absolute reference. So C5 should be an absolute reference. We don't want that to adjust. And also C95, we don't want it to adjust. Okay, A5 we want it to adjust, so we'll keep it like that. And then I'm just going to drag it down here. Okay, so basically we're counting how many times each of these different room types appeared in C5 to C95 of this worksheet. Okay, and now I'm going to use AutoSum to quickly calculate the sum. So we have a total of 91 bookings. And now we want to know what percent of the total bookings came from each room type. So I'm going to do equal. Okay, so for standard twin room, the percent of total bookings for standard that was contributed by standard twin rooms is equal B5 divided by the total bookings, which is in B11. Okay, and I press enter, and you'll see that it's 26.4%. Now, originally, this is going to be, no format. So if you want to change it to percent, you'll see here there's a shortcut button, percent style, and then you can increase the decimal or decrease the decimal as you wish. Okay, so before I copy this formula, I need to be careful because B11 should remain B11. So I'm going to change this into an absolute reference. And now I can copy this all the way down. Okay, so you can see that majority, or not majority, but a lot of the bookings, the highest number of bookings, percentage came from standard twin rooms. And second is for deluxe twin rooms. Now I'm going to calculate the sum. It should be equal to 100%. Now let's calculate the room nights. The room nights for each room type. Now, for room nights, we're not just counting. We need to add the room nights in this column, in this range. So that's H5 to H95. So we need to sum this column, but only if the room type is the one that we're calculating it for. So in this case, we want to use SUMIF, a function called SUMIF. Okay, SUMIF takes 3 arguments. The first one is the range to which you want to apply your criteria. And this is similar to COUNTIF. So the range is going to be the range to which we want to apply the criteria before we decide whether we want to include it in the sum or not is the room type. So first, we only want to include in the sum certain rows where the room type. Okay. So I go back to exercise 3 now. Now as you switch around, it keeps adding the sheet references. So if you don't want it, you can remove it. So look at this range and see whether the value in a particular row is equal to standard twin room. Okay, A5. And if it is, then include the value that is in the range that we want to sum in the total. So it's a little confusing, so let me enter the third argument. So the third argument, again, I have to switch over to EX2 hotel data. The range that we want to sum is here, room nights. So H5, drag it all the way to H95. Okay, and close parenthesis up here. And then I press enter and I go back. So the answer is 188 room nights. So here's the complete formula. So again, the first argument is the range to which you want to apply your criteria. And our criteria is simply we want to include the room nights value in the sum, but only if the room type for that booking is equal to standard twin room. So if it is a standard twin room, a booking for standard twin room, then include the room nights, which is in this range, H5 to H95, in our total. And that's how it comes up with 188 room nights for standard twin room. Now, before we copy this, we need to convert some of our references to absolute reference. Okay, and our total 627 room nights, and percent of room nights is going to be room nights from each room type divided by total room nights. And again, I'm going to convert this into an absolute reference so I can copy it down.